people as I can. I passed out a summary of last session 2025. I'll talk a little bit about that, and if by chance you didn't get a copy, I'll share digital copies with you, and you'll be able to share with all the folks that maybe aren't here. In addition, we have some information related to property taxes. I know a lot of people have a desire to talk about that. I've got some information related to 8 different HJRs that were recently released, and there's probably going to be more. I personally would like to do at least one more related to veterans, but we'll get into that a little bit later. One of the other things I would like to do is talk about 2026, the coming session, and a couple of things I'm working on. I haven't really had a chance to talk to everybody. Just a little bit about me. I'm a civil engineer, and what that means is I'm not a social person like social media. I'm a technical person, data analytical. So I tend to gravitate toward infrastructure. I have a background in stormwater modeling, flood mitigation, things like that. So
how did you get elected?
I think one of the things that, again, it's a priority is flood resiliency, and I'm working on something. I'll talk about that for the coming session. The reality is Florida has flooded forever, and it's going to continue to flood. We just have to be very diligent in what we do that's going to mitigate the structures and the flooding as best we can. But I had a very good session last year. I actually got 5 bills all the way through signed by the governor. For context, we had around, the first time I got applause for that. For context, there were around 2,000 bills that were filed. Around 220 made it through the process. And as a freshman, I got 5 bills. Some of them were not very exciting. Some of them are a little more meaningful, especially to me. One of those was a bill that was related to springs restoration, and essentially what that is, it's a bill that's taking 30 million gallons, 35 million gallons a day from waste treatment facilities. It's pumping it 20 miles from one, 25 miles from another, and it's then being routed through a constructed wetland for additional treatment. The water is then collected from that wetland and pumped 40 miles to a rapid infiltration basin. It's called a RIB. So essentially, it's a basin that is very porous, where it's allowed to infiltrate into the aquifer that feed the Itchinatucky and Santa Fe rivers. So this is a project that is being paid for by JEA, which is a utility up in the Jacksonville area. JEA is actually doing groundwater withdrawals, and they're having an impact on the aquifer. So they're paying around $780 million to do this project to offset their impact on the aquifer. So they're putting water back in, and the way it impacts the aquifers that are feeding rivers is measured. It's the minimum flow level in the river. They monitor the flow level in the river. They're seeing a decrease in it. So the utility sending this water back is going to raise the level and offset their withdrawal from the aquifer for potable use. So that was just something that reinforced the idea that we need to be very aware of what we're doing with regard to water. All water is valuable. You might have water that discharges to the Gulf. Once it's in the Gulf, it's saline, and you could use it, but you have to desalinate it. It's very expensive to do desalination. That's probably something in Florida's future, but right now we need to be mindful to minimize the impact to the aquifer. One of the other bills I ran was called BWPS. Again, it was a very technical bill. This is a system that removes nitrogen, 80% of the nitrogen from septic systems. A typical septic system is around 40%. Advanced treatment is around 50 to 60. But these are presumptive. They're not actually measured. They do a laboratory test, and then they build it in the field, and they presume that it works as designed. This system is a system that's actively monitored. There's annual reporting. There's actual adjustments that are made. The utility operator has telemetry where they can pull it up and they can see what's happening and adjust the system. So the DWTS system is one that is owned and operated by the utility. And the thing that's important is that it reduces the nitrogen loading to the effluent that's going to superficial waters. So what that means is you hear a lot about nutrient loading or things that cause algae blooms and stuff like that. One of the components to that is nitrogen. So if we can minimize the superficial discharge of nitrogen from things like septic systems or wastewater treatment facilities, we're going to have a positive impact on the environment. So these are two things that I was able to run last session. There were a couple bills that I wasn't the prime sponsor, but I did co-sponsor. One of those that I'd like to point out is there was a bill related to firefighter health and safety. Is anybody a firefighter in here? Okay, it's unusual. It seems like every crowd I talk to, there's at least one or two of them. We actually have 4 firefighters in the House and the Senate. So in the legislature, there are 4 firefighters. There's only one engineer, and that's me. So that's why I tend to get the water questions.
Folks here set fires.
So, this was something that is important. We try to support veterans, first responders, and the people that are on the front lines in our communities. So those were a couple of the bills that I ran last year. There were some, a couple others you can see on the paper. They're not as exciting, but if it's of interest to you. In addition, the committees I'm going to be on in the coming session is our transportation and economic development, economic infrastructure, government operations, natural resources and disasters, ways and means is the main committee, and then the Joint Administrative Procedures Committee. This is a committee that deals with rules. So, for example, FDEP, I don't know if you all are aware, but we're actually implementing rules that, again, reduce nitrogen and nutrient loading. They go into full effect at the end of the year. December 28th is when they go into full effect. These are rules that were a product of a bill that was ran in, I think it was 22, and then last year they did a referendum. I'm sorry, not a referendum, but a Senate resolution to implement them this year. So that this type of committee questions not laws, but rules that are going into effect for every state agency. One of the frequent flyers in that committee was ACA, which is one of the health committee agencies. I think they had 38 different rules that were being questioned. So they got to know their process and their work very well last year. The other committee, of course, is the Select Committee on Property Tax that I sit on. And as I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll outline what we are planning to do in the 26th session, and then go back to that. But if you'll notice, all of the committees I'm on sound like they're very technical. There was no healthcare, there was no legal, and no higher ed or education. So this is all stuff that I'm very comfortable with, and areas of interest in things that I enjoy working on. In the coming session, a couple of the bills I'm working on are banning AFFF, which is aqueous film forming foam. Does anybody know what PFAS is? All right, very good. So PFAS is what they call a forever chemical. It's what's crazy about this is prior to 1934, it didn't exist. Some German scientists created it. They couldn't market it, and they set it aside. 1938, there was a American company, I believe it was Dow Chemical or one of those. I forget who it was exactly, but they created what became Teflon. So it was something that during the war they used it for gaskets and valves in the nuclear bombs. After the war, they were thinking, what can we use this for? So they started researching and realized that it's hydrophobic and oleophobic, which means it repels water and it repels oil. So Teflon, they started doing cookware, obviously, that a lot of us know it from cookware. The other things that ended up in were like Vortex or fabric. Yeah. There's actually a lot of anything that's water repellent, Scotchgard, that's a PFAS chemical. So prior to 1934, they did not exist. Now there's probably 14 to 15,000 different chemicals that they've created. And what's problematic about these, some of these are more carcinogenic than others, but the main issue is they bioaccumulate in your body, meaning if you're exposed to them, it goes in your body, and because they don't break down, they just collect. So one of the products that is most abundant related to contamination in Florida is AFFF, and that's aqueous film forming foam. This is the foam you see on like when they spray on fires or car crashes or airplane crashes. So it's been known for a long time that the intersection of the issue with PFAS in firefighters is related to two things. It's the AFFF, and then the bunker gear they wear is impregnated with PFAS, or it has been in the past. They're actually phasing that out. The bill that we passed last year was included a component to phase out the impregnated bunker gear. The bill I would like to do is to eliminate the use of the aqueous film forming foam in the state of Florida. That is simply, essentially eliminating a product that is problematic in the state. The benefit of that, other than limiting the exposure to firefighters, is that it's going to reduce the source of contamination that is most frequent in Florida. If you look at a contamination map of the state of Florida related to this chemical, you'll notice that the areas of concentration are firefighter training facilities, airports, military facilities, and seaports in some cases. So in Florida, we're relatively safe. Yes, sir.
So the Teflon in my wife's Teflon pan,
get rid of it.
it's in my stomach now.
It's everywhere.
And the stuff that they put on the clothes, what does that do?
So PFAS is a pre and polyfluoroalkali. It's just a chain of chemicals. It's a long chain of chemicals. So there have been some that they've identified as being very carcinogenic, and those have essentially been banned. What they don't know is the other 14,000, 15,000, how your body reacts. They have one of the things that, the focus on firefighters is they have higher incidences of certain types of cancer. And they're trying to draw a correlation between the exposure to PFAS and the cancer, the increased cancer occurrences. There's a lot of information. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, go home and Google PFAS. You'll find enough stuff to keep you busy for a very long time. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was trying to tell everyone, if you have Teflon pans at home and you heat them up without cooking something in it, those fumes are invisible. If you have pet birds or something, it will kill them.
Yeah, the reality is that they call it a persistent chemical, and what I try to reinforce is that it doesn't necessarily mean it's toxic. If you get exposed to it, you're gonna die. But as it builds up in your body, it could have an impact on you. I, as a Navy guy, we used to use AFFF to clean parts. It works very well. Kevin, did you ever use it in your experience in the military?
On occasion.
Yeah, so it's military, firefighters, airport folks that have to fight the fires there. So there's certain groups of people that get more exposed than others, but the reality is that we are all exposed to it. If you buy anything in your, like for example, textiles, and you look for something that's waterproof, it's very likely it's got a PFAS chemical in it. Or pizza boxes, the ones that don't stain through, probably have PFAS, coffee pots.
Fire retardant clothing.
Yes. There are so many, the reality is it's very good at what they intended to do. It's just, we're discovering it's problematic. So, one of the things I'm trying to do is the first step to remove one of the major sources of environmental contamination in the state of Florida. I've been working with the firefighters and have a lot of support. I've also been coordinating with a doctor from Notre Dame who has a lot of experience with regard to testing the bill, in addition to banning or phasing out. It's probably more appropriate to describe it as phasing out the use of AFFF in the state of Florida. I'm going to try to begin collecting data at water treatment facilities and wastewater treatment facilities. These are the intersections of water and human activities. So trying to get a very good baseline. The EPA has kicked the can down the road. I think we're on year 3 of them pushing out their recommendation with regard to the contamination. But one of the numbers that they've kind of thrown out there is 4 parts per trillion. So that's equivalent to 4 drops of water in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So that's the detection limit that the EPA is considering toxic. Yes, sir.
Do you have a good substitution for firefighters? When I was in the Air Force, our fire extinguishers on the plane,
Yeah.
they could put out anything, but you had to wear a mask. But they
Yeah.
said this is as deadly as you can imagine.
Yeah, that's,
But if it's chemical, fire,
Yeah.
glass, whatever's burning, just
Yeah.
put it out.
Yeah.
Do they have good substitutes?
yes,
for
sir.
the fire
Yes,
stuff?
sir. That's PKPI. I use that a lot too. The purple K powder. I don't remember what the K was, but that's the dust. That's you charge the canister and spray on it. Yeah, but the substitute for the AFFF is called triple F. It's fluorine-free foam. So they've been using that in Europe for over 10 years. So there is a substitute. And again, with the bunker gear that the firefighters wear, there are substitutes. Again, it doesn't work quite as well. It works well enough, but again, those chemicals do exactly what they're designed to do. It's just we're discovering it's problematic. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I think we need to be looking ahead. The problem is that these chemical bonds are the strongest chemical bonds that I was going to say in nature, but that's not accurate because they don't exist in nature. We've created them. But even when you sequester, like if you have filters and you collect it, that chemical is still there. If you send it to a landfill, it's going to be there for hundreds of thousands of years, unless we develop technology that is destructive. And that's I'm sure somebody very, very smart is going to come up with a technology, maybe using some type of plasma to destroy it, and that'll be probably energy driven. That's a whole other issue in Florida, is power and energy. But that's one of the things I want to work on, and I went in depth on that just to give you an understanding of the context of why just phasing out AFFF is important. One of the other things, I'm actually working with one of the Liberty Caucus members, Rich Tatum. Actually, Rich and I went against each other in the primary, and I'm I have a thick skin and a short memory. Rich had an issue at SREP, the state requirement for educational facilities. This was something that was very important to him when he was in the school board, and he's back there now. He understood that we're probably overspending on school projects, and the requirements come from SREP, state requirements for educational facilities. So I've been working with Rich, and actually my firm hired somebody from DOE who actually managed the SREPs. He said prior to him leaving, he tried to get modifications for 8 years. So I'm in a position now where I can actually facilitate that. So working with my partner Dave and Rich, so we're working to modify the state requirement for educational facilities to provide some savings when we do new school construction. I'm also working on a flood resiliency type of bill. The consistent opinion of stormwater engineers is that we're underestimating what a 100-year storm is. So, last year we had, in my district, we had, or in Manatee County for that matter, we had 3 storm events. We had Helene, Milton, and Debbie. Helene was a coastal event. We had tidal surge. Milton was a wind event for many folks. And then Debbie was a tropical storm when it went through here. That was a rain event. Of those storms in my district, Debbie was the most impacted because of the amount of rain. The reality is when you look at the rain events that occur, Debbie, I looked around Lakewood Ranch where the big lakes are. Those are actually floodplain lakes, and Lakewood Ranch on Lakewood Ranch Boulevard, and there was flooding in River Club. So I looked at the rain event in that area, and it was about 12.5 in 24 hours. And the design storm through the water management district is 10 inches in 24 hours. So we exceeded the design parameters by 20%. So when a design fails, like a stormwater design fails a little bit, it's catastrophic because you're dumping water on your neighbor, it's flooding. So the realization that the 10 inches in 24 hours is not appropriate. The 10 inches in 24 hours is a product of IDF curves from the water management district. These are intensity, duration, and frequency curves. So this is data that was collected probably in the 70s. And one of the realizations I've had is that there are so many cyclical events that contribute to intensity and occurrence of hurricanes. For example, we see on the news a lot right now about Saharan dust. So that's just dust in the air, which if water collects on it, it's gonna be more dense and probably fall out of before it has an opportunity to form an intense storm. Or El Nino or La Nina. All of these events are cyclical events, and at certain times, every 40 to 60 years, you get very intense hurricane occurrences, heavy rain events. So there are some that occur intermediate, but the reality is you have to design to the acceptable standard, and 10 inches is not the acceptable standard. So what I'm going to be working on is requiring every state agency to utilize the most modern data. Right now, that modern data is Atlas 14 from NOAA. That's a running collection of storm events. They have a digital collection every time it rains. There are stations all around that collect it, and it goes into a database, and it's used for modeling. So the intensity of any storm event can be calculated, and it would be utilized for designs in the future. This is going to have an impact on things like the cost of housing because you're going to have to raise finished floor elevations. You're going to have to make larger stormwater facilities. You're going to have to raise roadways, like roadway projects are going to likely go higher. A very good example of how this might be used is during Hurricane Ian, the intersection of State Roads 70 and 72 flooded, and it was flooded for 2 weeks. You would think that it would be important to understand that intersection of two state roads, which is the primary evacuation for DeSoto County or the city of Arcadia, would flood in an event like that. So I remember my family lived in DeSoto County. I would try to go over, and you hit unpassable water. You have to turn around. You have to go all the way up to Hardy County to come back down 17. That's, it's very, very important to understand things like that. So that's something I would like to have a positive impact on. Some of the other things, looking forward, I had a bill last year, and it actually died in process. It was accessory dwelling units, and again, I would like to bring this back. This is something that is, it gives requires every municipality to draft a local ordinance related to lots of record that you would get the right to actually construct we call them mother-in-law suites behind your house. So this is an opportunity. One of the things that adds to the cost of a home, of course, is buying a lot. If you can do another unit behind your house that is for aging parents, for kids who maybe have not yet established themselves, this would be, again, an opportunity for inexpensive housing. One of the other things I'm working on is, I mentioned the bill where the distributed waste treatment system removes nitrogen. One of the other components or constituents of concern is phosphorus. Right now, septic tanks don't have a requirement. They look at TSS, total suspended solids, and nitrogen. They don't look at phosphorus. So I'm looking at adding that criteria for the design of septic systems. Right now, if you look at the nutrient loading for the Okeechobee Basin coming down, north of the lake, it's very high in phosphates or phosphorus, which is an indication of septic systems. It could be some agriculture. There have always been cows north of Lake Okeechobee, but it's having a negative impact on the quality of the lake. So again, these are just some things I'm looking at. I've got about a dozen different things that I would like to do, and I have to pare it down to 7 bills. That's all we get are 7 bills to run. And many times we might be asked by the senior leadership to actually prioritize. So we have to set something aside and whatever they might be interested in. I had one last year like that. It was simply called Water Management Districts, and it dealt with how the South Florida Water Management District was operating with regard to the Everglades restoration. That bill died on the floor. There was a difference between the House and the Senate. I've already talked to leadership on the House side, and I would like to actually try to pick that up again and move it through. The reality is that the Everglades is something that I think that every Floridian should value. It's a unique system. I don't think there's any other system like that in the world. And as an engineer, I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to drain the area. Guess what? They did a very, very good job. Now we're trying to unwind it and restore it to be more natural-like. And one of the things we're actually doing right now is a reservoir, a 10,000-acre reservoir. This is a huge area just to allow the water to be impounded so it doesn't wash out Southwest Florida. So those are some of the things that have already gone through the process, but there are some things we can do to make it more efficient, more effective. So again, that a lot of what I do is technical, and I apologize if I go down a rabbit hole on some of these issues, but that's, I think, one of the benefits of having a technical mind is this is something that a lot of people don't understand or don't have an interest in. They'd rather talk about Facebook. They're like regulating Facebook for teenagers or something like that. That's important, but that's not how I think. I think more of the in the weeds on stuff like this. So the next thing I'd like to maybe talk about and then take some questions, property taxes. So my observation, it's not like I know anything that like I've been read in on any of these issues, but regarding property taxes, I feel like the recent Doge that Manatee County was receiving and the property tax issues are going to create a bit of a dichotomy where there's conflicting interests. We have the CFO saying that Manatee's overspending, which really they mean they're over collecting on taxes, and then the governor saying we can eliminate property taxes. I would love to eliminate property taxes. The question is, what are we going to replace it with? Because many times there's the discussion focuses on the elimination. I think one of the things we need to be mindful of are the services that we're eliminating. I have a handout, and again, I apologize. I'll only have like 20 copies, but I'll send them to, I guess, to Mark, and it'll be available. So the House has already proffered 8 HJRs. Actually, one of them's a House bill. There's 7 HJRs in one House bill. An HJR is a House joint resolution, which means it ends up on the ballot. So it'll go through like a bill, but it'll ultimately end up on the ballot. So some of the HJRs that are being suggested, like Representative Steele proffered HJR 201, and that simply eliminates all property taxes with the exception of school property taxes. Every one of these school property taxes are excluded. So that's something important to know. I believe the reason that is it's constitutionally protected. So we can't eliminate that. I know a lot of people would like to maybe moderate what the schools are spending, but there's a lot of protections for the schools in the Constitution. So Kevin Steele's suggestion is eliminate property taxes immediately. So you have your vote, and everything with the exception of school property taxes would be eliminated. And to be very clear also, I'd like to make the distinction between the ad valorem and non-ad valorem. We're talking about ad valorem. Non-ad valorem, if you look at your tax bill, is many, many times debt service. It's something you voted on. And for example, there was a bond issued and this is paying the bond back. But what we're talking about is the ad valorem, not the non-ad valorem. One of the benefits of the discussion related to property taxes, a lot of people are actually printing their property tax bill and looking at it to see what they're paying. And a lot of people are surprised with, where the money's going. So if nothing more, this is an opportunity to educate everybody about the taxes. So one of the other suggestions from Representative Miller is that it's phased out over a 10-year period instead of eliminating it immediately. So if you can just use those two suggested HJRs as an understanding that these are going to be voted on, and we might end up with some things that are potentially conflicting. Like if somebody voted for each of these, it would actually be eliminating it, and one wouldn't be applicable. So these are just suggestions that are being proffered right now. It's not going to be one or the other. Yes, sir.
Mr. Bob,
Yes, sir.
you sound like you're a civil engineer that really wants to be a civil engineer. Where is your information coming from? The local projects that people are experiencing? We had a big situation here in Manatee, that big storm. A lot of screaming and yelling and so forth. And it sounds like you're addressing part of that. But as the engineer, sounds like you are the engineering department, the civil engineering department for the state of Florida and how.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if the question is related to property taxes or just.
Well, I would say that definitely related to property.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not, you're just doing this on your own, Bill?
No.
So you're getting input from
No.
an agency? How is all this stuff
So
being put together?
yeah, absolutely. Maybe a little additional context. I mentioned that we now have 8 different suggested bills from 8 different representatives in the House. Those are a product of multiple property tax select committee meetings. So we had Department of Revenue come in, we had the Doge folks come in, we had League of Cities come in with 3 different cities, we had Florida Association of Counties come in with 3 different counties, each of them presenting information. We had House staff collect information related to the difference between ad valorem and non-ad valorem. So we've had multiple hearings or committee meetings already, and from those we have at least 8. As I said, I would like to add at least a 9th, and I'm sure there are others. I haven't had these didn't come out until last Friday, and we had already left Tallahassee for the 2 weeks of committee meetings. So I haven't had a chance to talk to all of my partners in the House, but I imagine there are other ideas that are out there. I know Representative Ryan Chamberlain's got something he's calling the 1-2-3 plan, and his plan actually deals with how you might replace some of the funds that are being eliminated through the property tax. So the reality is something's going to happen. And the other part of this reality is the voters are going to pick it. It's not the House. It's not the Senate that's going to pick it. It's not the governor. All of these are going to be referendums that are on the ballot. So, yes.
Is it going to be a statewide referendum?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Because when I think about my bill, my tax bill, there are different categories. The fire department, child services advisory. And so my big question is, where is the money going to be made up? Does it mean that the sales tax is going to increase? Will the gas tax increase? Because it's like a tube of toothpaste.
Yes.
You know, you squeeze it out and just so much comes out. So it's hard to fathom that notion.
Yeah, and just to maybe address some of the consternation with regard to completely eliminating property tax. The property tax, I think the number is around 17% of it is the average for local municipalities. It's not like 100% of it, you know, that's their only source of income. There's a lot of other fees and things like that. But it's still 17% of a very large number that you're going to have to make up somehow. One of my concerns is that if you eliminate the property taxes, you're not really eliminating, you're shifting the burden because the need still might be there. So one of the concerns I have is who are we shifting the burden to? We're focusing on homesteaded properties. That's what we're talking about, which means the reaction might be to go to non-homesteaded properties and try to make up the difference. And what are non-homesteaded properties? That's going to be businesses. They're going to pass the cost along to their customers. It could be apartment communities. It could be assisted living. It could be nursing homes. All these things are potentially having an impact on somebody who might not be as physically able to absorb the additional costs. Who typically rents apartments? People who are either young or the other end of the spectrum, the older folks who are maybe trying to, you know, save money. They sold their house and they're trying to, you know, live off a restricted income, or people who aspire to one day be homeowners. So I actually volunteered to be on this committee because I wanted to be a part of the process. I was telling Mark earlier, some of my thought is I would like to be a part of the process, not a victim of it. Right? You know, I want to have a voice in this to make sure. I understand, like I said, I would love to eliminate property taxes, but the question is, who are we shifting the burden to? So I'm 100% certain something will be different, and it could. Oh, yes, ma'am.
So this Manatee Doge thing, how much waste did you find? Is it more
was
than?
not involved in
I know,
that.
but you don't know the answer to that?
I just saw what was reported, $112 million. So
17%?
I have no idea.
That's why I can't find out, because
That
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of programs that are, you know, waste.
yeah. Well,
That 17% can easily, to me, be, you know,
you have to
made
understand.
from that stuff, or explained to me.
CFO is under the governor, the executive body, not under the legislative body. So there's a very good reason why the CFO came to Manatee County,
Because of the waste.
because of the governor.
Right.
You do understand that she probably knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a lot of us want to leave you with, at least I do,
Yes.
is that we're tired of being effed over by the government.
Yeah.
We eventually want to own our homes. We don't want to be these space-age serfs forever tied into a government that we can't stand anymore.
Yeah. So,
You know, the government tried to kill us, you know, with COVID.
yeah.
And then they tried to jab us to death. They restricted our freedoms. They've effed us over for the last freaking time. So we want to leave you with this. Find a way so that we can get out from underneath this, because a lot of us in here have restricted incomes
Yeah.
and are going to be working until we drop dead.
Again,
That wasn't the promise that I was brought up on,
Yeah.
brother.
again, it's going to be up to the voters. We can't eliminate that. You have to understand, this is a constitutional issue that has to be voted on by the issues. What we're working on is to proffer the things that would be most appropriate. And again, none of the money goes to Tallahassee. It's all local taxes. It doesn't go to Tallahassee. So this is, again, inference I was making is the governor having the Doge and the governor also suggesting property taxes can be eliminated is creating the actual, like, the dialogue, the consternation that you're feeling right now. So, like I said, I would love to eliminate it, but we have to be mindful of how are we going to replace the services that are
This is
necessary.
exactly what the Democrats say every time that we try to get rid of taxes. Well, you've got to replace it with something.
Well,
No, we should get rid of something.
there's going to be a resolution that says eliminate property tax. If that's the way you feel, that you'll be able to vote for that.
Well,
Yeah.
you want to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
I'm going to be holding my breath waiting for that.
Mark.
Yeah, Bill, first of all, I want to thank you. Last March, myself and a couple other members here, visited you up in Tallahassee during the RLC lobby days. You extended all the courtesies to us, and let me tell you, I really appreciate that. I mean, it really showed us, the way around. But with that, over the last year or so, there are two big issues that kind of emerged in this group. One was the radioactivity and from the effluvium from Mosaic out in Duet, and that they're actually getting higher rates of radioactivity out there.
Yeah.
Are you aware of that? Are you looking at that? Or
No.
Oh boy, well look at the movie Phosphate.
Yeah.
And it's a documentary from a guy by the name of Garrett Rainey, right? I
Eric
think we have a
Crown.
lot of people here, so right?
Eric Crown is the producer.
He's the producer?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's just an astonishing story about pollution on a grand scale due to Mosaic. So I don't know if that's in your bailiwick. I think I actually might be Mike Owens.
It
might be Mike Owens'
Well,
district, but still, it's within your
it's would be
domain,
an
right?
issue that I would have an opinion on. I would like to be better informed before I actually.
Spell it PHOSFAT.
FAT. I'll send you the link.
Okay. Yeah. No. Okay.
Yeah, take a look. And well, the other question I got though is on, over the last, I think it was like 6 months ago, we had Dave Walsh here, actually from CRA, Citizens Renewing America, and he did a presentation on solar farms.
So he spoke for, he's not with Sierra, he spoke.
He
at
spoke
CRA.
at a CRA event, correct, right,
Clear.
there's a CRA event. And, it seems that it's a gigantic waste of money, this solar. So I don't know where you stand on that, is there anything that we could do to look into that?
I do have an opinion on solar, so I
Okay.
am informed on that. Yeah, the solar, the issue with solar, one, the life cycles are shorter than advertised. They'll say 30 years, but the reality is they're about 20 years. The sourcing of the minerals are all foreign. They typically end up on agricultural land, pulling ag land out of production. And in general, the solar in Tallahassee is falling out of favor, especially with that. I don't know if this is going to be as well accepted or clapped for, but I'm a proponent of nuclear power. So
I like that.
having a military background, I'm a Navy guy, so the Navy operates more solar reactors than anybody. And again, this is a rabbit hole we can go down. But I'm sorry. Oh yeah, the solar Navy. Yeah, that's no, the nuclear. And the reality is, most of the stuff we have right now is pressurized water reactors. They operate at very high pressures. That's what's problematic and dangerous. If you they use water as a moderator, and if the water circulation stops, you have the water that continues to heat up, and it eventually gets hot enough where it does burn into steam, and you end up with the explosion. 3 Mile Island, Fukushima, all of those was the steam causing the explosion, not the nuclear elements. The reality is there's a generation 3 and 4 reactors that use things like molten salt or sodium as a moderator, which will not evaporate. So they're much safer. They can be in a contained vessel, and they have passive safeties. For example, it's almost like a freeze plug. So if you get the runaway reaction, the plug will melt, and it'll drain the molten either sodium or salt on the vessel floor. It's radioactive. It's dangerous, but it stops, and they operate at 1 atmosphere. They don't operate at a high pressure. So I'll work my way across.
Okay. So just a quick question. These 8 are going to be on the ballot?
Not necessarily. There's going to be debate and discussion.
Will there be more than 1?
Yes.
Will there be more than 2?
I think there will be.
So my question is, to get this passed, you have to go over 60%.
Yeah, for any.
So if you have our voters, and we have 4 choices, none of these will pass.
Yeah.
Right? So that's really
Well,
a disadvantage.
No, I think it's how the messaging is going.
Unless I can vote for all 4.
You can. That's what I'm saying. They're going to be referendums. That's why if you vote for HDR 201 and 203, 201 is going to, yeah. So I don't know exactly what it's going to be. Yeah, my thought is it could be something like, for example, there was, let me see, HCR 205, sponsored by Juan Forrest, resolution would exempt Floridians over the age of 65 from paying non-homestead. I could very well see that pass where more people are going to embrace that idea than, say, eliminating it completely. So that's what I think is going to happen, something like that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was my
Okay, you're
question.
next.
That was an excellent
Yeah.
question, by the way.
Yeah.
That's my question.
When do you think, when's the referendum?
It'll be on the ballot.
In 26, so in November 26th. Okay.
Unless you vote by mail, you don't want to do that.
That's it.
Yeah, quick thing, one thing tied to what Mark asked about. You said that the appetite for solar is going down, but what does that mean in real terms? Does that mean, pertaining to what Ross presented, does that mean that the taxpayers funded subsidies for Florida Power and Light, Duke Energy, those that encouraged them? Just today, I got an email from Florida Power and Light inviting me to get solar power and things like that in my house. Does that mean that the legislature and will the governor and the executive branch go along with this to remove the incentives? Because right now there are promises. That's what Duke and Florida Power and Light have got plenty of money. But the reason why they're investing so many millions of dollars into solar is because they got nothing to lose. They got a promise of that. So what is going to be done in the legislature and in the state executive branch to take that away? You can say we don't have any, but hey, let's hear show me the money.
I can't speak for the governor, but there were bills drafted last year that were trying to ban solar on new construction of solar. I suspect there's going to be additional ones. The reality is that you have the House and the Senate, the legislature has to agree on something, and then it goes to the governor. The governor can either sign it or take no action. So it has to be both bodies of government to agree to something. I also know that a lot of money was coming from the Fed, and that's dried up with the new administration. And I think that's one of the reasons. I had a conversation with the FPL folks last Thursday, and I asked them explicitly, because like I said, I'm a proponent of nuclear power. I think Florida needs to make as many investments in nuclear power and move away from solar. The reality is solar isn't power generation, it's power harvesting. Once you harvest it, you then have to use batteries to flatten out the peaks. So that's not a long-term solution. That's a temporary. So the FPL folks actually said they're trending away from solar. But again, that was a conversation in their office with somebody who's asking questions.
Yeah, the property taxes. This is my biggest concern because I've seen it happen in my time here in Florida. It will come out on the ballot next November in either 2 or 3 different things to vote on, and it will be advertised both by the governor's office and by the state legislature as something as over-promising, delivering something that it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know, I know that Commissioner Cruz just talked to all of you quite a bit. You probably read his Substack at length. Very well done. He talks, one, about North Dakota having just last year, having thought this was a great idea, putting on its ballot, and then after being further educated, he said, this doesn't deliver on what it was promises. They voted it down. It did not pass. There. And because one of the promises is, it sounds good on its face. Oh, just eliminate all taxes. But it is, like Carolyn suggested, it's a show game. And like you know, it is just moving because there are certain things that are paid for. It's not all just about waste. There's certain services, and we didn't even talk about the law enforcement, the sheriff's office, and all that. Those things have money, and we're increasing the money that we're investing in law enforcement left and right. And there's no appetite to decrease that. That's still got to be paid for. Yeah, when you do that, so it is a little bit of a shell game, but in the end, one of the things that drove this was to make it more affordable, housing more affordable. Well, if you can afford mortgages in Florida, and it's getting increasingly hard to do that, the next big thing, and I don't care if you have paid it off, you still got to pay homeowners insurance. That's the killer. You pay multiple times more for homeowners insurance than you'll ever pay for property tax. That's the killer. We need to do more about the things that are really killing taxpayers, that are making homes less affordable in the state of Florida. Instead of doing this thing, it sounds good, it gets us elected in 2026 to put this on the ballot. I'm sorry, you didn't get it right. So that's what I'm afraid of. But we'll see.
No, a lot of us do get it right. We know the shell game. We're tired of being pushed around, and we want to get out of this serfdom, this space-age serfdom that they created for us. And some of us do understand that the government can do it less.
My fight is not with you. You're not
Yes,
the legislator.
it is.
You're not the government.
Douglas,
You said cut all taxes. Period.
I did not.
Okay.
There's got to be a way forward.
All right.
I don't trust you to do
Let's
it,
think about that.
but I'm willing to give you a chance. So
Yeah.
go
And
ahead.
again, it's not going to be me. It's going to be on the ballot. Wait. Before we move off that, Kevin's point. Yeah, I will. Before we move off Kevin's point, he made a reference to last year's amendments, and this year, or this coming year, when this is on the ballot, I think it might be very different. The governor's going to be essentially lamed up and headed out. I don't know that he's going to be willing to tap into his PCs to fund the removal, reduction, however you want to describe it, of property taxes. I guarantee you, the League of Cities and the Association of Counties will be very, very active in speaking against it. I think that's what's going to happen is we're going to hear more about why we need it than support to remove it. And I think each of us have to do research and understand exactly, what is appropriate. That's what I foresee happening. So, James, I'll get you in a minute.
Yeah, my question is, in Texas, they're all Democrats. I mean, Republicans, not Democrats.
Not the
They actually pay people or paying people to see clouds. Here in Florida, you're a felon if you see clouds.
Yeah.
I always thought the Republicans in Texas thought like Republicans in Florida. What's the difference there? Is it a technical difference, a political difference?
Well,
And I got to follow on to that, which is definitely a technical engineering question.
yeah. You're talking about the bill,
Yes.
the cloud seeding bill.
Geoengineering.
Yeah. Geoengineering. I sat on one of the committees that heard that, and I was actually surprised. We had somebody came forward, and that was his business. He was speaking in support of cloud seeding.
But you had to have a permit anyway to see
Yeah,
clouds
yeah.
before. You just couldn't do it.
What the bill actually did, I don't think it was, you're a felon, you have to be licensed to do it. You have to be licensed to
So you can
operate.
still do it?
I think there's a license. I don't know explicitly if what the process is, but the discussion was if you operate out of an airport. The reality is nobody talked about drones and how would you manage that if you can see with drones?
You could. You can also see from the ground
Yeah.
with rockets. I guess my follow-on question, a lot of Democrats are looking at that bill and say, okay, you can't modify the weather. People like AOC say airlines, they put the gas out to the carbon.
Right.
I think it's minimal. They say it's more than minimal, but that modifies the weather, that you have to cut back on the number of airlines flying because you're modifying the weather patterns. Also, a lot of Democrats say, not the chemtrails, I don't believe in those, the contrails, they do modify the weather somewhat too. And there's ways, I was in the Air Force, not to have contrails, so you can eliminate completely, they'll destroy the airline industry. But a lot of Democrats are saying, this is our end. That's their bill. We could use it and twist it to our advantage. Do you see that happening? I haven't seen them do anything yet, but.
Not really. There's a supermajority in the House, and very seldom if there's anything contrary or negative, like they try to add something on, and very seldom does it. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. One of the bills I think you said you're looking at is to allow a second house on the back of a property.
An ADU, accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Essentially the mother-in-law suite where it's a standalone unit, so you wouldn't have to split your lot in order to do something. It would still have to be built in a footprint that, for example, if you have a lot and you have side setbacks and rear yard setbacks, you would, if you were to come in, nobody's gonna do this, but come in and raise your house and come and build out the entire lot that is allowed, it would still have to fit within that area. Many lots that would, if you built something, it would be fairly small, 750 square feet.
I'm asking, would that state law then supersede HOA?
No, ma'am,
Okay.
that would be, the bill last year was to require local municipalities to address the issue. For example, in Manatee, we already have a ADU law.
I know.
In Miami, they have it, but there are other municipalities that refuse it. And what's so difficult about the state of Florida is you look at something that fits in Miami, you take it out in Hardy County, they said, oh, you can only do 750 square feet. What if you got a 5-acre lot in DeSoto County or Hardy County? You can build a 2,000 square foot ADU, and that's the difficulty is finding something that works across the entire state of Florida. So diverse. James, sorry.
So try to be short, but I grew up in Georgia, and so I lived in Newton English's district as a high school student. And there was another guy named John Linder. They had a plan to eliminate income taxes on the federal level.
Yeah.
They called it the fair tax. And I want to encourage everyone, because if the Republicans aren't together on this, it's got no chance, because Democrats love taxes, boy. They love it.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage Republicans to reject the premise that everything that gets away from government has to be replaced somewhere. It's not true. It doesn't have to be replaced. And the tactic is always the same. The tactic is this. We say, you want to lower taxes significantly in Manatee County or in Florida or wherever? Oh, well then the dam's not going to get fixed, and the roads are going to fall apart, and the red lights are going to fall through the floor, et cetera, et cetera. So they pick the things that are most important to people and say, that's the first thing that's going to go if you lower taxes this year. And instead of saying, if you end up tightening our belt because we work for you, you're the citizens, we're the government, we're supposed to be working for you. If you decide that we need to do it with less money, we're going to do our darndest to take care of the biggest priorities. And if we have to cut back in other areas, this is a nice place, If we have to cut back, and I was on the commission, and I decided I knew I didn't have support for doing significant tax decreases. So I decided to support the best projects I could. That was my, that's what I had to do with the hand that I had dealt. But man, if we get an opportunity to do this, I hope we get behind the idea, because it's the way it should be. We shouldn't be renting our homes from our government. It's wrong. And one more thing, I'll tell you, local governments are not operating on the same level of constriction as Tallahassee is. Tallahassee is pretty doggone, in my opinion, pretty impressive with how far they stretch it off. And now I'm talking about wonderful people. I love everybody, county staff, etc. Great people, but there's a lot of money coming into different coffers on local from those property taxes. I think we could do better.
I agree. The reality is that the taxes, it's a simple calculation. It's millage rate times assessed value to get a dollar amount. It's a manipulation. They keep saying we're lowering millage rates. Do you know why they're lowering millage rates? Because the property value is going up. So it's a shell game to act like they're doing something to save money. They're looking at the answer and they're changing the millage rate to get the answer they want. The other thing is a lot of people, I haven't heard very many people acknowledge this, but the increase in property values is also having an impact on property insurance. If you buy insurance for a $400,000 house at 1 fee, what do you think it's going to be for an $800,000 house? It's going to be more, and they're not constrained by Save Our Homes. They're gonna hit you for the value of your property. So we don't have a property tax problem as much as we have a property inflation value problem. That's one of the issues, and that's why it's so difficult. Nobody wants to, have their property value. Well, I guess if you're buying insurance or paying property tax, you don't mind it being low, but when you want to sell it, you want it to be as high as you can. That's one of the things I haven't heard a lot of discussion about, but again, it's just a very simple equation, and they want to focus on millage rate and not look at the property value. That's crazy. Yes, sir.
Just want to talk about one bill you want to pass with your wastewater system on-site
Yes,
treatment
sir.
systems
Yes.
for private residents. A lot of the system, basically it's a septic tank.
Yeah.
It's going to be your older homes which fill them, which is going to be long-time residents, older people on limited incomes.
Yeah.
The systems which y'all wanting to upgrade to, and I agree, we need to reduce our loading, running off through into our wetlands, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and all that.
Yeah.
I get it, but the impact on the residents is going to be 20, 30,000 when their septic fails and they have to upgrade to the system. If you're going to pass a bill like that, the government should be giving them some kind of rebate to pay for that system, because I know people don't have that much money in their pocket, especially the senior people in our communities.
Yeah.
And I've been in wastewater 30 years. So
Yeah. So if you're looking at the bill, the bill that was signed into law, it would probably be, you probably one of the few guys that would understand this, but it's actually the DWTS is a system that's owned by the utility. It's not actually owned by the homeowner. So what they do, have you been involved in any septic to sewer projects?
yes, sir.
And you want
map the basins, but you said
exactly
about residential.
Yeah.
In with this, so
So-
that's why I'm getting worried.
Yeah. No. There's you look at basins like watersheds, and you look at the nutrient loading, and it's called the DEP or the Water Management District. They have something called a Basin Management Action Plan, and what they do is they look at the constituents that are high in those areas, and then they try to find solutions for them. If it's high in phosphates or high in nitrates, it's usually septic systems or agricultural waste, like if you have a dairy or something that's concentrating flow, and they look at ways to try to provide solution. If it's tied to a septic system, they may try to get grants to do a septic to sewer, which means they try to collect it and then send it to the wastewater treatment plant. The DWTS is a system that's between septic to sewer and septic tanks, where there actually money's available through the septic to sewer program because they're much less expensive. They're about $20,000, but they're owned by the utility. The downside is that you go from not having a utility bill to actually having a utility bill. They would charge you like sewer service on your bill, but they don't have to install it. It would be installed by the utility. But they do. It's like a licensing. They would essentially do that in lieu of the septic to sewer project, which many times people get assessed. I've heard people get assessed.
They are getting assessed.
Yeah.
So,
So it's not required. It's opportunities for local municipalities to have a positive impact on the BMAPs, but they have to assume the obligation because they are actively monitored. There's annual reporting. It's inspections, monthly inspections of 10% of the units. All these details are done in an effort to demonstrate that they are performance. They're performance based as opposed to presumptive. Actual.
Yes. One last thing,
Yes, sir.
Senate Bill 180, are we gonna try fixing that where we can bring back some wetland buffers and we could govern locally again some? I'm not for more government, but I'm for environment and wetland impacts, you know.
Yeah.
We're gutted down to the state minimum of 25 foot, and I know we're trying to bring back 50-foot buffers and stuff, and right now we're restricted, you know. Are we going to correct that bill? I mean, if it was wrote wrong, let's recognize it, fix it.
So
Where do you stand?
So I've had conversations with Commissioner Cruz. This is something that he's talked about a lot. The reality is the bill was called emergencies. So it was written with one presumption. It's being interpreted or applied a different way. I told George it makes sense that you go back and you try to define what what's burdensome. I've heard that there are already bills drafted. I don't know if they've been filed yet to take some action on that. The concern I have is that the county filing on the lawsuit to get any bill signed into law, the governor has to sign it. So my concern is that if there's something adjusted in the bill, it makes it all the way through the House, it ends up on the governor's desk, is he going to sign it? That's the reality. You can't kick the governor in the shin and then ask him to sign a bill into law. So I'm hoping it works out. I don't really see a clear path.
Is he gonna veto because of two counties?
He doesn't have to veto it.
I mean, 66 county, 65 counties want to change. Just because Manatee and Orlando filed suit, what about the rest of the state? He has to think about that.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to veto. He just wouldn't take action on it, and it's the same outcome. The reality is that honestly, I don't know. I've heard modification, do an amendment to 180 or maybe do an additional bills that clarify some of the language. I don't know what the best solution is going to be, but so I'm a consulting engineer. My company, Kinley Horn. We work. Guess who's writing the comp plan for the county? It's Kinley Horn. So I'm hearing from my partners in Orlando because they were working on Orlando's development code. So I'm probably one of the few people that's having a financial impact on my company, where the change is going to release the opportunity for revision. Orlando was either Orlando or Orange County. They were simply trying to do a form-based code, which is different. You look at every use a little bit differently. So it's different, but is it more burdensome? There's no definition, so you don't know. So it essentially stops every change. And there were a couple bad actors. I've heard Pinellas County was one that was problematic, and that's the reality of a couple bad actors have an impact on the entire state. Right? Yes, ma'am.
Are you saying that all of you guys voted yes on a bill you didn't understand?
No, we understood it.
Okay.
You can read it and come to a conclusion. We had one vote on it. It was amended in the final vote.
And there are a lot of us fought that bill after we.
I don't believe that. I talked to George Cruz. He said all the way through, he didn't realize it had changed, and I know he was monitoring it until it.
I mean, we did when we. Oh, you mean the language was? Are you saying the language was modified at the last minute after you guys voted on it?
No. Whenever you vote, it goes from chamber to chamber.
Right.
3 times back and forth max.
Okay.
The last time it was in the House, the amendment was added.
And are you guys allowed to vote that down?
You can, but the language isn't problematic in the amendment. It's how it's interpreted.
So each county or can interpret it different, or how is it being?
In Florida, a bill that's passed is presumed to be constitutional until challenged in court. So the typical process would be not as adversarial as this one is right now, with multiple counties signing on. It would usually be something that would run through, but the way it is right now, it's become a cudgel I feel like the governor's going to use to bash certain counties, Manatee being one of them.
Well, that's kind of irresponsible. I mean, obviously the lawsuit, like you just said, the courts are the ones that interpret the laws, and it's going to clarify the language and the intent of the legislature.
Yeah.
You're presenting that you had no such intent, but it's being interpreted a different way. Well, there's no reason. You can easily moot the lawsuit with an update to the law. So there's no reason to take it personally and use it as a cudgel.
For that to happen, the governor would have to sign the bill.
Sure.
Do you know our governor?
This is all coming out of your mouth, not mine.
I've mentioned that we have to work with the governor multiple times.
Sure. And it shouldn't be taken personally. And I think Commissioner Felt said this is not personal. We need clarification of the law.
Yeah.
And if everyone presents it that way, well, why are we going to act like children and use it as retribution against people for seeking clarification for what is your guys' job to protect our community? Okay, not to outsource the decision making to people who only their personal profit interests matter to them most.
Nobody's outsourcing.
Well, that's functionally what's happening. Because if we are not allowed to increase our impact fees, we're not allowed to.
Bodies of government.
Yeah, and they're all staffed with people who have conflicts of interest, people who have financial interest in having more development. And so they all wind up with their lawyers threatening lawsuits to Manatee County and use this very stern language like, oh, if you do this, you're going to be against the state law and all that stuff. Now, look, all we want to do is get clarification. What does this mean? I think this is unconstitutionally vague. Well, that's for the courts to decide, isn't it? Okay, let's be adults and let's handle it. Either you guys fix it in the legislature or the courts will fix it. I prefer you guys do it.
Yeah. And again, you're missing the point. Whatever we do in the legislature has to be signed by the governor. There's three bodies of government: the court system, the executive body, the governor and his people, and the legislature.
I understand that. If he doesn't sign it, that's a shame. That he
The
would.
governor specifically said that if the legislature just changes this one clause right here, a more restrictive and burdensome amendment to its comprehensive plan of land development. Very simple. Either eliminate that or clarify it with absolute clarity. I mean, as the governor said, that if the legislature do that he will veto it.
No, but
then I don't understand.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Would you support?
Again,
Do you agree that is too dang vague and it has led to great problems here in Manatee County? Because we the people cannot get our commissioners to do what we elected them to do because of SB 180.
Yeah. Again, I talked to George. I said we need to find what burdensome is. Again, the original intent was that this bill was for areas that had emergencies. So the original intent was to provide fiscal stability in a local municipality in the event of a hurricane or storm, whatever the emergency was. The way it's being used is it's not for emergencies where it's being repaired or restoration. It's being used in greenfield construction where they're saying it's different. The fact that burdensome isn't defined is very problematic. I think, as I mentioned, I think there's at least two bills already drafted that will address this issue.
And you will, depending on the wording of those, you will support them and take your chances. You take chances whether the governor will veto or sign everything you all do.
I'm not saying I wouldn't support it. I'm just telling you that the approach with the filing of the lawsuit, Manatee could have stayed out of the lawsuit.
Forget the lawsuit.
No.
This is in hand right now. Next session, you'll support a bill because you agree that this is too big and it's caused problems and it needs to be fixed.
Yes.
Okay. It'd be great if we didn't have to go to courts to do that, But you, the legislature, can fix that and take your chances on whether the governor will sign that. Particularly since Yen specifically said, well, if you fix this problem right here, if he hasn't said, no, I'll veto it if you do that, even if he did say that, you gotta take your chance, just do what is right.
No, what I'm saying is, there's two solutions to this. One is the court, getting an interpretation.
Years.
I don't know what the time frame is. I know it's already filed. And the other is legislative with the governor signing it.
And that's you.
Yeah,
And you'll support that?
yes, I will.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, I don't know if you know it, but the governor and the legislature is not on the best terms. We ended up in a 106-day session, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna have special sessions. The governor is going to, I think, make this an issue, and because certain counties filed lawsuits.
Different branch,
Yeah.
like you said earlier, you can't speak for the governor.
Well, we can't
You
change
can
it.
speak for Representative Conerly.
Yeah, we can't change it. We're gonna have to go through the process. But I'm thinking, yes, sir.
And I know this has been more exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I have learned more in the past few moments than I have in the past few hours. Bill, we want to thank you for coming. Thanks for answering questions. Thanks for asking questions. Now, as I mentioned before, if you've already paid, the only thing I want you to leave is desserts and money. Okay? Those two items. In that order.
And Jack, I'll get you the copies.
Good, good.